What's up, everyone? Welcome to Fan Sports New York Varsity. I'm your host, Frank Langella, joined by my co-host, Marcelio Langella. And this is our Week 4 preview for Section 1A football. Mars, Week 4 already. We're halfway through, at least halfway through the regular season. Things are picking up, man. How's it going?
It's going well, man. I think the fact that we are right around the corner from really looking at the playoff picture, right, per se, and I think that's going to be really the interesting time where we'll get to see which teams make it, which teams don't, and what are going to be the tense situations going forward past this point.
Absolutely. I want to welcome our audience. We appreciate you guys for tuning in like always. And again, we're previewing the Week 4 for football. And if you're new, welcome. And if you like this kind of content, make sure to give a thumbs up and subscribe to help out our channel and for future content. And also, if you would like to donate to our channel, you can get access to our Patreon in the description below, as well as our website at famsportsny.com. And we appreciate any donations. And thank everybody who has donated to us so far. But what's going to happen in this show, Mars? We're going to talk about the games on slate. I'm actually going to give you a little sneak peek of the standings for both sides real quick. And then we'll do some breakdowns on some of the top matchups and pick the games at the end. So let's dive into it. The games on slate for this week. Rye at Foxlane is a league game. Harrison at Lakeland is a league game. Brewster at Clarkstown South is a league game. John Jay Cross River at Pelham is a league game. Nyack at Yorktown is a league game. Somers at Mahopac. We got a league game. We have Eagle Academy of Brooklyn at Eastchester. That is a non-league game. And Clarkstown North at Sleepy Hollow, league game. You can see all those league games right there, right? So we got to start looking at those standings. Going to be really important around playoff time. And again, I'm not sure what the name is of the two leagues. So I'm going to call them League A and League B. But let's start with League A. And sitting at the top, Mars, is Pelham at 4-0. Probably one of the bigger surprises. They're 3-0 in league play, followed up by Somers, who's 3-0. They're 2-0 in league play. And then probably one of the biggest surprise teams of the section so far, Eastchester, Mars. They are sitting at 3-1. They are 2-1 in league play, tied with John Jay Cross Rivers, also 2-1 in league play, but a 2-2 record. Then Sleepy Hollow's 2-2, but they're 0-2 in league play. Mahopac 1-2 and 0-2 in league play. And finally, Clarkstown North, who's 1-3. They're 0-3 in league play. And on the other side, in League B, Rye and Clarkstown South both tied at the top, 3-0 in league play. Rye is 4-0, South is 3-0. Then it's Harrison 3-1, 2-1 in league play. And then you have a four-way tie, 1-2 in league play, Mars. Yorktown at 2-2, Lakeland at 2-2, Brewster at 1-2, and Foxlane at 1-3. And then Nyack is at 0-3 in league play, sitting at 8. So a lot has to be settled, obviously. But let's go over some of the top matchups and then pick the games. The first one I want to talk about, Marsh, Rye, 4-0, 3-0 at 3-0 in league play at Foxlane, who's 1-3 and 1-2 in league play. And Rye won versus Nyack. Foxlane lost versus Clarkstown South. And I want to start with Rye. Offensively, again, this was a very young team coming into the season. They lost a lot of players from their title contender team last year. And offensively, this is the number 5 offense out of the 15 schools in points scored. And listen, what I like about Rye is you're starting to see some balance to their offense. One week, they're going to hurt you throwing the football. One week, they'll hurt you running the football. If they can keep that balance consistently and have a balanced attack, I really do think this offense can continue to explode. This week, it was running the ball. Tommy Richardson, Mars, 117 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns last week. A.J. Miller only threw it 10 times, Mars. He was 5 of 10, but 164 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. And he's got weapons, man. If you give him protection, he's got guys on the outside. Griffiths, he had 1 catch for 55 yards and a touchdown on a long bomb. Rath McSweeney, he has been an absolute stud for them on both sides of the ball. Everyone needs to start knowing this young man's name. He had 3 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown. I think now he's had a touchdown in each one of the 4 games so far this season, which has been really big. And he's also been a good defensive back for them as well. Garnett's got into the action now this week, 31 yards and a touchdown, running the football. I mean, they got guys. You're starting to hear new guys every week, but some of those top guys that they have been absolute studs for them. And they have quite a few guys. And Foxlane, again, has to deal with all of them. So to me, the balance, it's not so much focusing on Foxlane. Obviously, you're going to scheme up against them, but being balanced is going to be real important for Rye. They can, again, continue to be balanced. Foxlane's going to have a tough time stopping them. Defensively, Mars, last week they forced 2 INTs, and Rye is they don't have like some top guys that you know of in the section defensively, maybe besides Sirac. But like they just have multiple guys who make plays for them each week, and it could be different every time. Like last week, Kesner, he had 3 tackles and INT. Simmons had an INT. Gonzalez, we've heard a few times, he had 3 tackles. Guazo, we've heard multiple times. And obviously, Sirac, the defensive lineman. They have multiple guys who make plays for them. Multiple guys. They don't really rely on one guy to be a big-time playmaker defensively. They have multiple guys who can make plays. And obviously, stopping the run this week is going to be huge. That's Foxlane's bread and butter. If they can stop the run, Foxlane's not very comfortable being in second and third and long, right? They're not a heavy throw the football type team. They want to run and dictate the downs to the defense. So if they can stop the run, they're going to be an opportunity to force some turnovers like they've done the last couple of weeks. Marsh, what are your thoughts on Rye?
Yeah, I think Rye was probably a big surprise. Not because Rye's always a good team.
As well.
Right, Rye's a very good team. They have a very good program, very good coaching. I think the key thing is that I think a lot of people were surprised because you lose a lot of talent like they did. It's hard to replace everybody, but they just seem like there's no drop off. They're just consistently the top level team. And I think at the end of the day, you have to count to like the offensive lines are playing great, but these skill guys have just been phenomenal. I mean, AJ Miller has been the guy who I said was performing at a top level at the very beginning of the season. He's just getting better and better as the weeks go on. And I think that at the end of the day, you have a lot of ways to kind of score points. So I think this offense just needs to continuously do what they've been doing and just be efficient, right? Establish the run. But like you said, they have a good balance. They have a good mixture between run and pass plays. I think that's a good thing because it keeps the defense on their toes. They don't know what's going to come next. And defensively, I think they've just been very consistent as well. I think what they're going to need to do is try to force Foxlane to be in those long scenarios where they're going to have to throw the ball and just let your secondary kind of step up and make some plays. I think it's going to be up to the front seven to force Foxlane to have to go into pass.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention this defense, Mars, tied for second in points allowed so far this season. 3-way tie at second. But again, that was to me the bigger surprise, right? Because we knew I had a feeling these young guys offensively were going to be very explosive. The way they played defensively has kind of been a pleasant surprise for Ryan. When we go to Foxlane, Mars, and we look offensively, defensively, obviously offensively has kind of been the more inconsistent group for Foxlane. I mean, they've scored over 20 points once so far, and they're going to have to run the ball. I mean, running the ball is again, a real important identity for Foxlane. And so you got to look at this offensive line. They need to step up, right? This offensive line is going up against a tough defense in Rye. As I mentioned, number 2 in points allowed. Guys like Mejia and Bailey, they're going to have to lead this unit to try to create some holes for their rush attack. And it's going to be so important because they need to keep Rye's offense on the sideline as much as possible. If you could take away 2 or 3 extra possessions from them, it's huge for your team. It'll give you a better opportunity to win. And obviously, Travis has been really important to Foxlane running the football. He had a couple weeks ago, he had a big-time game. This is a young man who can help carry the load and get a lot of rushes. So he's going to be really important for them. They got to get ahead of the sticks, get them in opportunities where they can be aggressive throwing the football without getting caught in the second, third, and long. Because Rye, you're probably going to see loaded boxes and you're going to see stunts. I mean, they're going to put some of these guys on an island. You're going to have to take advantage of them at some point. But, throwing against some of these secondary guys, they can pick the ball off. So you got to be careful. Defensively, listen, last week was rough. I mean, they gave up over 300 yards passing. And now you're going up against Rye, and their pass offense is a bit scary, right? But I thought overall for the season, this unit has been pretty solid besides last week. But it makes you a little nervous, right? You give up over 300 yards passing. Now you're going up against another strong pass attack. Things could get ugly. So you kind of have to look at guys like Charlie Hoyt, who's been very active, James Minotti, who's been a very strong 2-way player for them. They need to make some plays, and they need to tackle in space. And they're going to have to be, kind of creative in their coverages. I'm interested to see, hey, do they kind of take away the receivers and force Rye to run and try to see if their front 7 or front 6 can kind of win those battles? Interested to see that. Do they kind of box coverage one way, and go man another? right? Do they mix it up? Do they send stunts, pressures? Interested to see how Foxlane takes this, but they got to do something. They can't let AJ Miller sit back and throw the football, or it's going to be a long day. Mars, what are your thoughts on Foxlane?
Yeah, I think Foxlane, it's going to be obviously really tough to play against Ryan. I think that their offensive line is going to have to be the key cog here to really push this offense going forward, because if they can establish the run, then it opens up everything else for them. And defensively, I think it's going to be a challenge because, like you said, they struggle against pass. They struggle against the pass. So you're now going up against AJ Miller and this string of playmakers they have on Rye that is going to be tough. But I think the key thing that Foxlane's going to do is they're going to have to send the heat. Like you said, they're going to have to force AJ Miller to make a mistake, right? And just try to win the down, win each down, and can go from there, right? I think at the end of the day, it's going to, Rye's going to score points, but it's going to be, can you at least, limit the amount of big plays they can make, because they just have so many guys that can make the big play.
Yeah, if Rye scores over 24, I think Foxlane's in trouble. Let's go to the matchup, Mars. I'm looking at these Rye wide receivers who've been really, really strong versus this Foxlane defensive backs. How do they respond after a tough week last week? To me, is the matchup. All right, Mars, let's go to the next matchup. Harrison, 3-1 at Lakeland, who's 2-2. Another league matchup here. Harrison won versus Yorktown last week. Lakeland lost at Brewster. Harrison is 4-1 versus Lakeland, but they last played 2011. Been that long? Yeah, guess so. 11 years. Pretty crazy. But let's start with Harrison. Offensively, Mars, this is the number 3 offense in points scored out of 15 schools, averaging 38 points a game. And they have scored 30-plus points now in 3 out of the 4 games. But obviously the big thing is their quarterback, Citro. He got hurt last week. Do not know his status heading into this one. He got hurt in the game, and they had to have their third-string quarterback come in, Nico Marinelli, who's a running back and safety for them, had to move to quarterback, and he helped save the day. And he had 129 yards rushing and a touchdown. He was also 2 for 3, 31 yards passing and a touchdown. Interested to see how the offense now runs with him. I think you see less passing. They don't pass a lot, but I think you even see even less if he's in at quarterback. And to me, when you have your third-string quarterback, and he is a athletic guy, right? He can run the ball. Obviously, he had 129 yards rushing. But when you have your third-string quarterback in, what do you have to do, Mark? You have to rely on others. Others need to step up and help this offense function. And to me, it starts with that offensive line. And Lakeland is not a very big team, but they're fast, right? So this offensive line needs to move bodies and get a hat on a hat, especially at the linebacker and defensive line level, where Lakeland can really hurt you with their speed. And so I'm looking at guys like Ranello and Haynes, and they got to take control of this offense. And other running backs, right? Barcella, another really strong runner for them, 137 yards and a touchdown last week. Krupe's another guy who's made a lot of plays offensively for them. And obviously Chris McLaughlin is the big play threat on the outside. Maybe you see some jet sweep stuff with him. Maybe you see some quick hitters. Maybe just give Nico some easy throws, right? Some simple ones. Get the ball in McLaughlin's hands and see if he can make a play, because he's a big play waiting to happen. He had 55 yards receiving and a touchdown last week. Also had an INT. Defensively, this is another group that's been a bit surprising. Defensively, Mars, they're tied for second in points allowed, Harrison. So they're in that 3-way tie for second in points allowed. And this is a big test for the secondary this week. Obviously, Lakeland, they have guys who can beat man coverage, who can beat one-to-one coverage on the outside. They have defensive back McLaughlin, who's one of the best defensive backs in the section. And he's now had an INT in 2 straight games. But you're going to see a lot of 2x2, 3x1 motions into trips. And they're going to try to test each level of your secondary with a pretty strong quarterback. They also have a pretty good screen game, so you have to be disciplined, right? They have to stay with their reads. They have to be smart. Lakeland wants to get you out in space, but let's see can they get a little bit physical with these wide receivers? Will be interesting, especially in the slot, right? Try to reduce the space that these wide receivers have. I'm interested to see kind of the coverage setup that Harrison goes at Lakeland. Mars, what are your thoughts on Harrison?
Yeah, I think Harrison has been very good, especially in the offensive side, third of all the team in points scored. And I think that's obviously going to be an interesting to see, obviously whether or not Citro will play or not. It seems like he might not be, but obviously we don't have injury reports for these guys. But the key thing is I think the offense is going to go as far as the offensive line takes them. I think the key thing is going to be about opening up running lanes and allowing for your playmakers to make some plays for you. And defensively, I think that they've also been very consistent. They've been tied for second in points allowed, and I think that their secondary is going to be tested often, which means that their front four, front five are going to have to get to the quarterback. They're going to have to force a inefficient play to really give their secondary a break because they're going to be tested quite often this game.
Yeah. When we go to Lakeland, Mars, offensively, this is the number 12 offense out of 15 schools in points scored so far. It's been a bit inconsistent. And I think a lot of the inconsistency comes because they don't have a consistent rush attack, which forces them to kind of be one-dimensional. And listen, running back Scaglione is a shifty back who can use him out of the backfield in the passing game as well. And I'm looking at this offensive line and say, hey, can this offensive line take a step up? Right? Harrison's not that big either. Lakeland's not big, Harrison's not big, but who's going to show that toughness, right? Who's going to win at the point of attack? And this would be a good way to start for Lakeland to get a consistent rush attack. And I also think they got to use their quick passing attack as an extension of the run game, right? Quick passes, throws to the running back, screen game, help that rush attack kind of open things up. And now when they empty the box, and now you have some number leverages, maybe you can get some of those rush attacks, right? So that's going to be really interesting. Obviously, Grady Leonard is a really talented young quarterback. He was 19 to 30, 182 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Anthony Jennings, as a wide receiver, has been a very reliable target. He had 2 touchdowns last week. This guy has been a big-bodied receiver who can make plays for you in this offense. And obviously, they're going to target him. Interesting to see if Harrison's going to put their best DB on him, have him follow him around, or maybe they bracket coverage and leave him on somebody else. Interested to see what they're going to do with Anthony Jennings. But they have some other guys in this receiving core that can make plays for you. That's why they have to spread the ball around, and they have to do some quick hitters to kind of act as a run game for them if they struggle to run the ball. Defensively, listen, Mars, I mentioned the offense has been pretty consistent. Defense has been pretty consistent, right? This is the number 8 defense out of the 15 school in points allowed. And I think for the most part, they have been strong, and they've used their speed to their advantage, especially up, in this linebacker core, which I think is one of the stronger linebacker cores in this class. Last week, Mars, they gave up less than 100 yards rushing and 240 yards total. I mean, this defense played well enough to win last week. And then obviously it's led by their linebacker, Stephen Carroll, who had 14 tackles last week, has been an absolute nose for the football. But they have multiple guys who come up and tackle you, and they can swarm. Right? So it's going to be really important for them to, again, prevent the big play. You mentioned it, preventing big plays, force Harrison to drive down the field and score, but don't give up big chunk plays. And try to make some plays on third down to help you get off the field. Mars, what are your thoughts on Lakeland?
Yeah, I think for Lakeland, I think the first thing we're looking at is this offensive line needs to step up. I think they need to really open up the lanes, try to help develop the run here. Because I think at the end of the day, their best route is that if they can develop the run, it gives their guys more time to really control the time of possession. And I think that it really depends also on their playmakers and the receiver core to really just play out. They have to show up. They need to kind of make this a collective effort, right, by all groups involved, in order for them to get an advantage on offense. And defensively, I agree with you. I think their defense has been pretty solid. They just haven't been able to score a lot of points offensively compared to defensively. They're holding teams, like you said, to not a lot of yards. But like you said, they have to limit the big plays. They have to limit this because, I think that at the end of the day, they have good linebackers. They have a solid front. They just need to basically get some pressure, right? Force some turnovers and just try to get efficient time possession on offense. And I think they'll be pretty solid.
Yeah. The matchup to watch for me, I'm looking at this Lakeland pass attack versus the secondary of Harrison. It's going to be really intriguing to me, especially, how does Harrison, they probably kind of have extra DBs and rely on their front seven to stop the run, even if it's unbalanced number-wise. Let's go to the next matchup, Mars. Brewster, 1-2 at Clarkstown South, who's 3-0. Another league game. Brewster won versus Lakeland last week at home. South won versus Foxlane. South is 1-0 versus Brewster. They have not played each other much at all. Last time they played was the COVID year, I believe, which they won 22-19. I believe that was the time to play. Let's start with Brewster. Listen, I think this offense, Mars, at times can be pretty strong and pretty balanced. I mean, they are number 9 out of 15, which is not bad. They're averaging 26 points a game. And last week, they didn't have great success running the ball, but they made a lot of plays throwing the ball. And again, it shows that offensive balance that they can rely on one side when things don't go wrong. But I do think this offense is at its best running downhill and hitting those edges on the run and play action pass off of it. And obviously it starts with a quarterback, Perello, who is probably their most important player. Obviously quarterback is an important position, but him, he's an important player who even plays two ways at the time. 12 of 21, 146 yards and a touchdown, also 2 rushing touchdowns. This guy really is so important to this offense. And they have a running back who's, to me, an Anfuso. 46 yards rushing, right? Didn't have a great rushing day. But 48 yards receiving. This is a running back that you can throw out of the backfield, whether it's screens or routes out of the backfield. Pretty good guy in space. But there's another guy, Barry, 29 rushing yards. Again, not a lot of rushing, but another guy who in open field is pretty speedy. And their wide receiver, Walters, they hit that big play action, 68 yards for a touchdown to him. He has been tremendous for them. But he's not the only. They have some guys, but when they go play action and they can hit you with that rush attack and play action off of it, this offense can be pretty deadly. They made some big plays. Defensively, though, Mars, is kind of the other story. So defensively, this is the number 15 defense in points allowed, right? So that's last out of the 15 schools. Too many big plays given up, especially in the passing game. Now, last week had 4+ sacks, which was huge, again, resulting in a win. 4+ sacks. Carlson, he had 2 sacks. Paragostini, he had 2 sacks. Colin Lamorix, he was very active. He had 9 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. Again, they're going to need these guys to be very active. These defensive linemen are going to have to be very active. And this secondary is going up against some stud receivers in this pass attack. So you're going to have Walters, Rienzi, Sanchez. These are guys who are going to have to step up big time because they have given up way too many big plays. Way too many big plays, way too many points. It's going to be extremely important this week that they ball out or it's going to be a long day. What are your thoughts on Brewster, Mars?
Yeah, I just feel like generally for offensively and defensively, they've been pretty inconsistent. I think when you're looking at the offensively, I think that if one side of the ball is doing well, like if their rush offense is doing well, then their pass offense has not been consistent. I feel like they need to find footing on both ends, right? They need to find footing on multiple ways, to play. And I feel like if they can kind of develop the run and then be efficient on those passes, just to kind of open up the playbook a little bit, then it's going to allow them to kind of play around and try some things that are going to help them get some more points on the board. And defensively, I agree that this is probably the worst of the 2 units because the fact is this defense just lets up too many big plays and then they just get caught behind it. They just don't have a chance. The big key is going to have to be the secondary. The secondary is going to have to play a lot better than they normally do, and I think that front 4 is going to get the quarterback and cause him mayhem because it depends. If you're going to try to send more, a stunt, then you're going to put your secondary on an island, right? But they might have to go into the zone and just see whether or not their front 4 can make play. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do here.
I disagree with you on their offense. I think their offense has been pretty solid, but let's move to Clarkstown South. We know their offense has been pretty explosive, right? This is the number 2 offense out of 15 schools in A, 40.7 points a game, Mars. They've had 38-plus points in each game this season, 2 40-plus point games the last 2 weeks. And obviously, what I really like is you're seeing some more of a rush attack from this offense. We know that they can pass the ball. And it starts with their quarterback, Holder, Mars. 14 of 17 last week. Really efficient. 315 yards passing. He had a rushing touchdown as well. Chris Ali, 6 catches for 201 yards. We know about Fatera's another big play threat guy for them. But Jake here, 3 rushing touchdowns. And he is actually, the last couple of weeks, he's been really strong for them, running the football. And that was kind of the big question I had coming into the season is, can they get a consistent downhill runner for them? Now, he's not a very big guy, but if you can get some guys who can run through contact, it creates that balance. I talk about balance a lot. And when you have a balanced offense, that's when you're pretty deadly. Because let's say the weather's bad, let's say your pass offense is struggling, you got to rely on other aspects of your offense to make plays. He has been a big part. Kevin Butler has been another guy who you can kind of filter in. He's had 2 rushing touchdowns as well. There's different weapons that these guys have that have been extremely impressive. We talked about these guys. It just continues. And again, going up against Brewster, last in the class in points allowed so far. They have an opportunity to make big plays. But pass protection is going to be important on this one because Brewster showed last week they can get after the quarterback. Defensively, Mars, they had 3 INTs last week. This is the number 5 defense in points allowed. Play action is going to be big. Brewster does a good job of play action pass. They also do some screen game. You got to be smart. You can't be too aggressive defensively up front. Discipline, right? You have to make sure you follow your reads. So the number one focus to me, though, is on their quarterback, Perello and Brewster on Clarkstown South. He is such an important player for them, both throwing and running the ball. Stopping him is going to be vital. Defensive front seven, going to have to be really strong. Keep Perello in the box. Don't let him break contain. Marsh, what are your thoughts on South?
Yeah, I think South offensively has been probably extremely explosive. I think they have multiple ways of playing. And I think that the fact that they have not only a explosive, run game, but their passing game has just been phenomenal. They have a lot of guys who make big plays for them, and I think that's going to be kind of something that they rely on. But it's going to also depend on their offensive line and do they step up.
Yeah.
Defensively, I think that they need to get pressure. I think the key thing is that they're going to see a lot of mixed type of attack from Brewster, and I think the key thing that I see is that in the passing game, they need to really try to land on those sacks and try to force some pressures. And obviously in the run game, keep contained. Force everything into your linebackers that are just performing very well. I think the key thing is going to be just, like I said, being consistent. I think offensively, I know that they can score points. Defensively, that's what's going to be the question. Do they limit the amount of points that their opponents are scoring, or are they just going to kind of let them, kind of stay around? And I think South is proving that they kind of been very disciplined on both sides of the ball.
I also want to give a shout out to South's offensive line, Mars. We haven't talked about them enough. And they have been really strong. They've been really strong for them. And I know they don't feel they get enough respect, Mars. So I want to give a shout out to them. But the matchup I'm looking at the Brewster offensive line versus Clarkstown defensive front seven, right? Again, when this offense can run the ball, Brewster, they do the play action out of that. That's when you see, and I thought last week the offensive line kind of dictated up front. They need to continue to do that. All right, Mars, let's go to the next matchup. Somers, 3-0, 2-0 in league play at Mahopac, who's 1-2 and 0-2 in league play. Last week, Somers won versus St. Francis Academy. I thought it was a big victory. Mahopac lost versus Pelham in overtime. Double overtime, excuse me. Somers, they're 2-0 versus Mahopac. Haven't played each other a lot either, but last 2 years they played, and Somers has gone 2-0. Let's start with Somers, Mars. When we talked about their offense, remember it started off slow at times in the first half and in some games. This is still the number 4 offense in points scored, averaging 32 points a game, and they've had 35-plus points now in 2 straight games. This offense is starting to figure things out. They're starting to get into a rhythm. And quarterback Simons had a passing touchdown last week. He's now had a touchdown in each game this season. But a guy who's really stepped up to me and has kind of been a real bright spot, especially the last couple of weeks, Luke Savino. Had 119 yards and a touchdown last week. We know how talented he is as a kicker, but he's becoming more of a downhill runner for them. And it's extremely important to have that kind of guy. It's another fear that you have in the Somers. Do they have that kind of bell cow back that when the passing game is not as smooth, can they run downhill? And you got to give Luke a lot of credit. He's been a strong runner for them. He's not a very big guy, but he's been a strong runner. And another huge play guy for them that needs to get at least 10-plus carries each week, Robbie Dobbs. I mean, he had 10 carries, 96-yard touchdown, also had a long receiving touchdown. He's their biggest play threat, right? He's a guy you can line up on the outside, throw it to him. He's probably the fastest guy in the field, right? When you get him in open space, on jet sweeps, outside runs, throwing him to the outside, he is tough to contain. But I do think the biggest thing, Mars, and why this offense, again, while we knew the pass attack might take time to get going, this offensive line has stepped up. And guys like Polito and Greco, that they're going to lead the way. Being a physical front, up front, moving bodies. They're going up against a big Mahopac defensive front. This is going to be a test, right? We talked about Mahopac, one of the bigger fronts. Let's see the Somers front step up, right? This is another game that's going to be kind of a respect game, trying to dictate, hey, this Somers offensive line is top tier in this class, right? I think they're going to have to show it this week. Now, defensively, Mars, talked about Somers trying to learn things offensively and become more consistent. This defense has been pretty consistent since the get-go. This is the number 1 defense in points allowed in A, out of the 15 schools. This defense has been strong. They swarm to the ball. They do not give up a lot of big plays. And again, I've been real impressed. This has been another year where this defensive unit has come out very strong for them. And again, stopping the rush attack of Mahopac is going to be huge. You have to bottle up Koch. Koch is a huge big-time rusher for them. And I'm looking at defensive linemen and linebackers being the key to this game. Defensive linemen like Ryan Cole's been strong. Polito, linebackers like Kennedy, defensive linemen like Greco. These are guys who are going to have to make plays in the box. And they got to prevent Koch from hitting these big plays. I mean, we talk about he has hit a big chunk play in every game, right? I mean, he is their big play guy. He is the one who sparks Mahopac's offense. You cannot let him beat you. You need to force someone else to beat you, right? So that's got to be the number one thing. Aiden Kulikin is another guy. He had 90 for a touchdown last week. You know, this is a defense that can force turnovers, and really they just kind of squeeze you. They get you into a second, third, and long, and it is tough at times to move the ball against them. Mars, what are your thoughts on Somers?
Yeah, I mean, Somers is like similar to what I said about Rye, where they lose players, but they're still there, right? They're still a good team. And I think when you're looking at this offense, I think all around they're just clicking, like you said before. In the very beginning of the season, when you can kind of see that they just weren't there yet, right? And I think as time goes on, being more of a younger team, they're just going to get better, right? But obviously, you're going to see some key playmakers that are veteran present here, like Baffett Simons, Lupino. They're going to make big plays for Somers. And the question is going to be about this offensive line. Will they bring the power along with them and open up the lanes for this run game? Because I was going to have some more open spots when we started seeing, play action pass. And I think Baffett Simons is going to be kind of slinging it all over the field. I think he's just been a very consistent guy all season long for the most part. And I think that, like I said before, the offensive line is going to dictate how this game goes, right? If they dominate up front, then this will be an easier win, especially running the ball. Defensively, like you said, they're very consistent. They've been very consistent last year, same thing this year. I think the key thing is going to be about them trying to, keep everything in contained, try to, like I said, try to keep Koch inside the tackle box, right? He's the game breaker here. The best athlete Mahopac has. So you should be that should be their key. Look where Koch is, because that's most likely where the ball is going. So I think keeping him, contained might be more beneficial to them, because now it eliminates one of the better players.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and I do think Somers running the ball is going to have to be big, because Mahopac struggled against that last week. Let's go to Mahopac, and let's start on the offensive side. They lost a real tough game at home off a bye last week to Pelham in double overtime, which could have gone either way. And offensively, Mars, this is the number 8 offense out of 15 schools in points scored. And to me, they have one of the best players in the class in Joey Koch. Mars, he had 270 all-purpose yards last week. And 2 touchdowns receiving on swing passes, had a kick return touchdown. But to me, the glaring thing I saw is 13 touches, right? And when we talked about this game last week, and you picked Mahopac, I picked Pelham, and I said for Mahopac to win this game, Koch would need 25 touches overall, right? And so I'm going to say it again. I think Koch, for Mahopac's offense, and they made plays last week, but to me, consistency of that offense is run through Joey Koch, right? And he needs to get 20-plus carries in a game like this versus Somers. And that doesn't mean it's 20 carries, 20-plus touches. So that's throwing it to him, running it with him, moving him around, right? He is a home run hitter. As in, when he gets into the open field, there's not many people who can catch him. But you can't be discouraged like when he gets 2 or 3 yards, right? Just keep feeding him. Just keep feeding him, because he sets up everything for everybody else. That's when the play action pass opens up. And I know 216 yards passing last week, 3 touchdowns. But again, 2 of those touchdowns were on swing passes to Koch. You know what I mean? One of them was 80-something yarder on a swing pass. When you get him matched up on a linebacker, that's bad news for the defense. And so that's what you have to do. You got to get matchups for Koch. If you don't give him the ball over 20 times, I think you have a far worse chance of winning. But he's not alone. Danny Koch is another guy who had a rushing touchdown last week. He's a guy you can move around as well at the running back spot and wide receiver spot. There's an idea you can move Koch at wide receiver, put Danny Koch in the backfield, make things not easy for a defense to line up in. Nate Muscali also had a receiving touchdown. Now, defensively, Mars, this is the number 13 defense out of 15 in points allowed so far this season. Last week, they struggled versus the run. And I'm imagining Somers and this offensive line of Somers is saying, hey, we really have to test if we can run the ball because we're big and strong too, right? So they gave up over 250 yards rushing last week. I'm imagining that you're going to see some Savino and Ravi Das running the ball this week. So they definitely got to step up, and it starts on the defensive line. Anthony Porco did have to leave the game last week. Coming back this week, he's such an important defensive player for them. He really is the guy who can generate negative plays up front for them. Big, strong, quick, and he's going to have to lead the way for this defense. Mars, what are your thoughts on Mahopac?
Yeah, I feel like when I was looking at the game last week when I made my pick, I said that was a desperation game, right? Where a game where you gotta have to leave everything on the line because it's gonna be very difficult to now climb out of a kind of a rough start all around, and now you're playing against Somers. And I agree with you. I think Mapac's offense has to rely on Joey Koch to be the main bell cow here. He needs to get the ball to at least more than 20 times. But the fact is that Mahopac has a lot of playmakers. The Koch brothers are both playmakers. They can do a lot of things on this offense. It just feels like as if they weren't really prioritized or really targeted, especially Joey Koch. I mean, just looking at this kid where he can really take a swing pass for a touchdown, like a 30-yard touchdown run. I mean, taking back kick return touchdowns. I know he had one in week 0. He had one last week. It's just this kid's a playmaker, right? And it's kind of interesting to see that, he's not really being utilized, right? And I think that's kind of an interesting thing because he's got a lot of talent. You said he's one of the best backs in Section 1A. And I think that, he should be kind of the dude prioritized. So I think on the offensive end, you got to know what you should be doing, right? Joey and Danny Koch be the guys that funnel all the plays through. Defensively, I mean, like you said, what 13? They're 13 out of 15, or they're 13 out of 15. I mean, you have guys like Anthony Porco. I mean, you have guys that got big bodies up front, guys who are playmakers that can do some damage. I really think you have to send the heat. You have to land when you do send, right? I think right now for this game, Mahopac is in. If they're not calling,
I don't think they can't send the heat this week.
Well, here's the thing: you have to send
against
something to stop the run. You're gonna have to stop the run.
Yeah, I think you gotta rely on the D line and front seven to stop the run. I don't think you can send heat, man.
Because here's the issue. The issue is that you're going up against a strong offensive line, right? You need to. I don't think to this point the defensive line has shown that they can withstand the strength. So the question is that you have guys on the outside who can make plays, right? Secondary, you have some talented guys, right? You have some guys like I mean, like,
I don't know, man.
Granted, you're gonna have to take away one. What are you gonna do? You're gonna sit and let Savino run you over? Like, just cut you up? Let this offensive line open a lane.
You have a big front.
I'm just saying, like, I think at the only one you have it's like a pick your poison. Right? Would you rather have, Savino cut you up because you're not sending the heat, or would you rather have Matt Fitzsimons cut you up because now you have less guys in the secondary? I think it's a mixture. It depends. Like, I think it depends. I think, like I said, stopping the run, I think would be my priority, and then say, all right, let's try to make some plays in the secondary. I think that's what I would do, but for God's sake, as the offensive guy, I'd say, give Joey Koch the ball. Yeah, I think that. I mean,
keeping Somers' offense off the field is the best.
Having extended drives.
It's not going to be easy running the ball against Somers. Like, that's not good.
No.
I think they have to be creative, and I watch other teams move around their star players like Pleasantville, right, with Daniel Picard. I think they have to take a similar approach when it comes to Joey Koch, right, where you got to give him the ball 20-plus times. It's not all plays, right? But 20 touches should be doable. And it's going to open up the pass game for other players and open up lanes for other players because the defense is going to be so focused on them. But you can't can't use him as a decoy. That's kind of my big, the defense knows he's getting the ball, but we got to give it to him anyway. You know what I mean? Like, you have to give him a certain amount of touches because there's at one point where he can break a couple tackles and he will score. Like, he is that big play threat that he just needs to make one guy miss, and he is a big time. He can bust the game open. You saw it last week. Pelham had all the momentum. Swing past the touchdown momentum. That kick return touchdown tie the game late in the fourth quarter. You know what I'm saying? Like, he is that good. So let's talk about the matchup, Mars. I'm looking at the Somers offensive line versus that Mahopac defensive line. That's going to be the big one to me, right? Because I don't think you say one thing, I'm going to say the other. I think Mahopac tries to take away the pass and rely on their big defensive front and linebackers to make plays, and that's going to be the big test. Let's go to the game of the week, Mars. This one was another really, really intriguing matchup. John Jay Cross River, 2-2, 2-1 in league play at Pelham, who's 4-0 with that big win in double overtime at Mahopac last week. 3-0 in league play now. Who would have thunk? John Jay Cross River, they won versus Sleepy Hollow. Pelham won at Mahopac, like I mentioned. I think this is the first time they're playing since before 2004. I couldn't find any games between the two. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people correct me in the comments. I'm sure they're big on me. But let's start with John Jay Cross River, Mars. Offensively, this is the number 6 offense in points scored. They put up a lot of yards. They had close to 500 yards of offense last week. Unbelievable. And their quarterback, Galea, Mars, 15-20, extremely efficient, 301 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, which was a school record. Broke his own record last week. And listen, I think they have a 3-headed monster at John Jay Cross River. We kind of mentioned it with Galea, 6 touchdowns, but Shapiro to me is kind of the engine of this offense. He had 131 yards rushing in a touchdown and also 79 yards receiving in a touchdown. He also had a pick 6. This guy to me is such an important player for them. He really has become an engine for this offense, and a guy who can run to the outside and run through contact off tackle, which is going to be extremely important, and receiving the ball. You can move him out into the slot. He played some wide receiver before, but running back is his natural home, and he makes plays for them. And then on the outside, Zaccanino, Mars, wide receiver. 6 catches, 179 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He also had uncharacteristic drops last week. He probably could have had another touchdown or 2. So very uncharacteristic, but still had an unbelievable game. But they're not the only ones. I mean, they have guys. If they can hold up front, throwing the ball is no problem. And running off tackle is not a problem. If this offensive line can match the physicality that it needs to, especially against a Pelham defensive front that is very physical, right? Can they match that physicality? I mean, they got guys like Savastano, Medicino as a wide receiver, but can they block these guys up front on Pelham? Guys like Luke Green, right? Guys like this front 7. Can they move bodies? It's going to be extremely important. Can they pass protect consistently? Because, when you can't rush, Galea didn't have much of a rush last week. He will kill you. I mean, he'll destroy you. He'll pick you apart. So, again, if they can hold up front, Mars, they're going to score points. But can they match the physicality is going to be important. The question I have, because I think this offense is really strong and can continue to get better, is defensively, Mars. That's my big concern. Again, they're tied for 9th, which is not too bad defensively out of the 15 schools in points allowed. But they gave up 320 yards rushing last week, Mars. 320 rush yards last week. I mean, that's way too much, right? that you need to be more consistent and more physical, especially this week around when you're going up against Pelham, who has a very strong rush attack. And they're going to hit you with counters, and they're going to hit you up the gut, and they're going to run off tackle, and they're going to try to push you around and run through you. And they need to, John Jay's got to be much more physical. I'm looking at this defensive line, Garofalo. He's going to have to lead the way, right? This front 7, I know they're not very big, but this is going to have to be, they're going to have to hunker down and bring some physicality to them using their speed and leverage. Because if they're giving up over 200 yards rushing, they lose this game, in my opinion. I think if they give up over 200 yards rushing, they'll lose this game. I know they could score a lot, but when you can't get off the field running, when they're running on you, if you're not hitting big plays in the passing game, your offense is going to be on the sideline, right? So that's going to be the big problem. They have to step up defensively. What are your thoughts on John Jay? I know I sounded like a little bit of a hater, but it was more of my respect for them I think they could be better defensively. Mars, what are your thoughts on John Jay?
Yeah, I feel like the big question is going to be, can the offensive line really move bodies, especially how Pelham is mainly a bigger team right all around. I think that John Jay needs to really prioritize opening up lanes for running plays. And I think the biggest question I have is defensively, right? And this defensive front seven kind of slow down the run and try to get their offense back on the field. If they can do that, then I think they'll have a pretty good shot here. But like I said, offensively, I'm not really concerned. Just to really about the defensively, can they stop any sort of big plays and really try to just hold down, anchor down on this offense, on trenches, and kind of get the control line of scrimmage in your favor.
Yeah, and listen, Pelham, they're aggressive defensively. They like the blitz, and you saw what Koch did on some of those swing passes. Can John Jay create some of those matchups with Shapiro? That's going to be interesting. Let's go to Pelham, Mars. Pelham is, again, they had a very strong year last year, graduated a lot of kids. And to come out with the start that they've had has been very impressive. And they have the number one offense in points scored so far this year, Mars. Number one. But it was a very sloppy game last week. Very sloppy game for them. Even offensively, they got to be better in the red zone. They had a missed field goal. They had a missed extra point. They had a fumble inside the red zone offensively. Pelham had multiple times to win that game and almost coughed it up, if we're being very honest. And listen, I also didn't see Timmy Myers, who's a very important offensive player for them. I'm not sure, again, watching from a camera is not difficult. You don't get all the numbers. Sometimes it's hard to see, but I didn't see Timmy Myers, and he's an important player for them. But Teddy Johnson was there last week, and he made a lot of plays for them. 115 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. This is a running back that, hey, you can hand the ball off to in the backfield, running downhill, off tackle, and you can throw to him. He's a very versatile player for you. And how about their wide receiver / running back, Massarelia? I mean, he was really good for them too. 133 yards rushing, a lot of jet sweep action and stuff like that. He had 133 yards rushing and a touchdown, also a receiving touchdown. He was really important for them. And another guy who stepped up offensively. And Callum Reen, we know about their quarterback. 5 touchdowns, I believe it was last week for him. 3 passing, 2 rushing. I mean, he was huge for them as a playmaker. They do a lot of sprint out, rollouts. They want to try to get him out on the edge, where again, he can make throws on the run, which I think he's at his best, but also take off and run at times. Not a very big guy, but he puts his whole body into those throws, and sometimes it could be real electric. Defensively, Mars, they're tied for second out of the 15 schools in points allowed. I mean, both sides of the ball has been really strong, but again, last week was sloppy. They had a real sloppy performance last week and not up to their normal standards, because they gave up 3 passing touchdowns of over 20 yards. I mean, too many big chunk plays. Now, we know Pelham likes to be very aggressive. They like the blitz, they like the stunt, and at times when you do that, what do you have to be, Mars? In man coverage, right? So you're going to have to be in man coverage. Against John Jay, you better get home, because man coverage against guys like Zach Canino and some of these wide receivers are not going to be easy. And if they do try to target their running back on screens or one-on-ones with the linebackers, that's also not going to be easy. So you have to be calculating with this, and you got to tackle better in space. I'm looking to see Luke Green, Mars, also step up this week. He didn't have his greatest performance when I was watching on tape. I'm imagining he's going to have a bounce back this time around, Mars. What are your thoughts on Pelham?
Yeah, I feel like that Pelham, the big question I have is, or really a statement, is just a lot of missed opportunities. I feel like they've had multiple times to, especially last, just win the game outright without having to go to double overtime. But you can kind of say the same thing where a lot of situations where, they have basically the, playmakers that can make the big plays, and they give a lot of different looks on offense. I think the key thing is just about landing on those every single time you get the ball, every single time you start a drive, make that drive worth something. And then whether that's driving all the way down the field and coming with points, or you're at least driving to wear out the defense. And they always have to have some sort of a positive everything whenever they get the ball on offense in order to possibly win this game. Because when they do run the ball, it's going to overlook the play action just because of people are bailing out for the run here. Defensively, I think that they just need to kind of limit the big plays. And honestly, I think this combination that they have between this very good secondary is going to give the defensive line an ability to really land and get some sack here, get some pressure to force them to try to have to maximize their blocking scheme, which then takes away receivers or others that could be going for routes. I would give Pelham the advantage.
Yeah, well, that secondary's got to step up. Again, 3 passes over 20-plus yards for touchdowns. Against John Jay, they can hit those. So you got to be careful. My keys, Mars, my number one key is pressure. I think quarterback pressures are going to be so important here. I mentioned Craig Galea, when he stands back there, they'll hit you with quick stuff, but they want to try to go deep on you. So he's got to hold the ball for a time period to make that throw. And if Pelham can get pressure, especially internal pressure, I think it's going to cause some problems for John Jay. And on the other side, if John Jay can keep Reen in the pocket, that's also going to be really important. Pressure is my number one key, and number 2 is out on the edge. Both these teams like to target the edge. Cross River likes to run to the outside, like throw to the outside. Same thing with Pelham. They like to run counters to the outside, jet sweeps. Whoever protects the edge the best is going to have a good chance in this one. Mars, what about your matchup? What is your matchup?
I mean, this is tough. I feel like it's going to have to be, John Jay Cross River's offensive line versus Pelham line. I think that the things that Pelham obviously has got to show up. Right? It has to have a bounce back game this week. And I think John Jay Cross River's, offensive line is really going to have to step up to create some lanes for running and just protection on pass. Right? Luke Green and amongst others are going to really want to cause some pressure. Right? And I think that's going to alleviate some of the secondary. And it's going to be an interesting sight to see who wins that matchup.
Yeah, my player to watch, Teddy Johnson of Pelham. Very versatile player for them, 2-way player for them. Huge. He's been a huge, consistent, versatile guy for each game this year. He's going to have to again this time around. Before we go to the game picks, though, Mars, I did a nice little breakdown of John Jay Cross River's offense and how explosive they can be with that 3-headed monster they got. For this video, we're going to talk about John Jay Cross River's offense and the 3-headed monster they have with running back Christian Shapiro, quarterback Craig Galea, and wide receiver Austin Zaganino. And this trio has been really dynamic this season, and they kind of can attack you at each level of your defense. And I'm going to start with Christian Shapiro and the running game for John Jay. And they like to attack the edges off tackle. Right, they're not very big up front, but they want to get these guys in space. You can see them in a spread look, 2 backs, and I like this little play design and the execution here. You're going to see they're going to run to the outside, all right? A little bit close to the boundary, but you can see all these linemen taking zone steps. This is a really tough block right here. They got to get to the outside shoulder of this guy right here from the right tackle spot, and this running back is going to block the first edge defender outside of him. Right, and they're going to be running right in here into the boundary, right? Really good execution. Again, not very big, but look at the linemen moving their feet. Good job on this double team zone block right here, right? To fight to get to the outside. He can now work his way up to the next level, and look at the job right here, getting to his outside shoulder. Right, that's really important right here. You want to create that seal on the outside, and now here they come, right? Really good job. Look at him turn his hips, his butt. Really good work by the right tackle right here. Again, nice kick out block, head inside, even blocking downfield by the wide receiver, and that creates the seam. Christian Shapiro is a very versatile player. He's a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he can put his foot in the ground and explode through these kind of seams. Right, watch him get shot out of a cannon. Boom. Just explodes right here, makes another guy miss. Big chunk play in the running game. Now let's talk about quarterback Craig Galea. Again, this is just one example, but he has done a tremendous job and improved dramatically on his decision making. And when he has time in the pocket and he has his feet set, he can deliver the ball at each level. And so this example, again, empty set, trips to the offense's left, 2 receivers to the right. You can see defense is set up a little uniquely, right? 2 guys standing right next to each other. You can see they're trying to play a little bit of a game up front to generate pressure. And you can see on this side they have 3 and 2. But these guys are the same level, right? You got one guy pressed right up here. This feels like there's some man coverage going on right here, but what's going on underneath is the question. And actually the defense does a pretty good job. They're only going to send one guy here, drop these 2 outside guys to any in-cutting routes right here. But there's a big hole in this defense, quarterback season. Look at the middle of the field, right? There's no safety in the middle of the field. If there's man coverage right here and man coverage right here, there's an opportunity to hit a big play right over the middle if these backers don't drop. So watch this play develop. Again, send one guy, drop these guys off to the flats,
First look is towards the trips. You can see you look towards the trips. This guy kind of takes away this undercutting route. Now he could throw the guy to the flats right here, but he works his way to the next read. Right here. Right, kind of on this post. Here's the open space. Look at the pocket right here. You can step into it, and when he can step into throws, watch him deliver this one. Look at him drive the ball over the middle right there. One block, and it's sayonara. Good read, good delivery. Leads to a long touchdown. Mention the quarterback, mention the running back. You also have to have a reliable receiver when things break down or you need them to win a one-on-one battle, and they have that in Austin Zaganino right here. One of the better route runners, and he can be that guy that you can put one-on-one versus somebody, and he can win those battles for you. But here they are on the left hash. They actually have two guys here, right? One with inside leverage, one kind of over the top. Probably should be outside a little bit because they're so tight. But this is a good job winning a one-on-one battle, right? He knows slants aren't going to work here. He's actually going to do an out. He's going to do an out at the goal line. And I love how he runs this route right here. He's going to attack the DB. He's going to get right on the DB's hips right here. DB knows, hey, I can't keep backpedaling. I got to stay in the end zone. So he's going to get his hands on him right here. Right? Really good job of swiping his hands down, you're going to see. And winning to get to the corner. Right? Quarterback knows where he wants to go. He believes in him. Look at him attack this football at the high point right here. Swiping his hands down, attacking at the high point. Look at the strong hands, and that's a touchdown. Again, John Jay has multiple guys who can make big plays for them. They're going to need to in their game versus Pelham.
All right, Mars, let's go to the game picks. Oh, man. Listen, last week, pretty strong performance. I went 7-1. You went 6-2. Our friends at Load went 8-0 for the A games. So for the season, I'm 18-5. You're 18-5. Load is 19-4. So we got some catching up to do, Mars. But me and you were tied. So we got to break that tie. Let's do it, Mars. First game up. Rye 4-0, 3-0 in league play at Foxlane, who's 1-3 and 1-2. This is a league game. We broke this game down earlier. Listen, Rye's offense being balanced, Foxlane having some difficulty generating enough points consistently, especially throwing the football. When it comes to that, I think Rye wins this one. I think Rye brings a lot of pressure, creates some negative plays, put Foxlane in an uncomfortable situation. I'm going Rye.
I'm also going to go Rye because Rye has just more momentum on their side, more playmakers. I think they're going to make some big plays here, get some points on the board. I'm going to go Rye.
Harrison 3-1 at Lakeland, who's 2-2. Another big league game. Mars Harrison could be on their third string quarterback. Listen, I thought Lakeland's defense played really well last week. They're going to have to bring that again this week. Passing the ball is going to be all about protecting the quarterback for Lakeland. And if they can get a consistency at the run game, I think this game's going to be closer than most people think. But I'm going to go with Harrison. I think Harrison makes enough plays offensively. I think, again, you're going to see some high scoring in this one. Defensively, they get a turnover too. Harrison wins it.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Harrison. I think that Harrison just has an all-around, more efficient offense and defense. And I think that's why, even if they're on their third quarterback, they've shown that they can make some big plays. I'm going to go with Harrison.
Nyack 0-3 at Yorktown, who's 2-2. A really important league game. Listen, Nyack has Fowler, the veteran quarterback who's made some plays this season. Going to have to be really important. Booten, we know, is kind of that home run hitter. A guy who can, again, make plays on multiple phases of the game. But Nyack offense, Mars, they're 15th out of 15th in points scored. Against this Yorktown defense, that's number 6. Pretty strong defensive unit. They forced 3 turnovers last week. I think this Yorktown defense is going to be attacking Nyack. Look for Myrells, who had 63 yards of total offense last week. I think it is a big one this week. I'm going Yorktown.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Yorktown as well. I just think generally their defense is stepping up. They definitely need to have a good game this week, and their offensive line needs to really open up the lane for guys. I'm going to go Yorktown.
Brewster 1-2 at Clarkstown South, who's 3-0. Another league game. Listen, I talked about Brewster before. They have an offense that could move on you, and this is a game that's really interesting to me, how Brewster comes out defensively, because last in defense against Clarkstown South, which was what I call their number 2 offensively.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't come secondary ready to go, it could be a long day for them. I do think that they come out with some balance offensively, but I'm going Clarkstown South. I think they just have too many weapons.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Clarkstown South. I feel like they just are more a well-rounded team. I think they just have more on the offense and defense side. They are definitely an explosive offense. I'm going to go Clarkstown South.
Eagle Academy of Brooklyn, who's 2-1 at Eastchester, who's 3-1. This is a non-league game. Obviously, researching Eagle Academy was difficult. I don't know them too well, but I'm buying the Eastchester train right here, man. I'm hopping on. I brought a ticket. I'm going to go with Eastchester, Mars. Offensively, it's kind of been hit or miss, but there's a big surprise to me defensively for Eastchester. This is the 7th ranked defense, Mars, out of the 15 schools. Chiafone, he had 7 tackles, an INT touchdown last week. Bloom, 6 tackles, a forced fumble. He also had 7 yards rushing. I think Sparadino, Provenzale makes enough plays, but those linebackers have been pretty effective defensively. I say they win. I think in a close one.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Eastchester. I've been betting on Eastchester the past few weeks, and they proved me right. I think the key is that
Mars has the train ticket.
Yeah,
already.
they have been having a lot of fight against these bigger teams, and I think that's been driving the season going forward. I think they just have momentum on their side. I'm going to go Eastchester.
Clarkstown North 1-3, 0-3 in league play at Sleepy Hollow 2-2. They're 0-2 in league play. Really intriguing matchup to me, Mars. Listen, Clarkstown North's offense has been a struggle. They're ranked 14th out of 15 in points scored. It was good to see quarterback Malaysia back, although the pass attack was very rusty, right, including turnovers. They need these guys to step up, Malaysia, Loudon, Lopez, because defensively they haven't been too bad. I mean, they're tied for 9th in points allowed. Alex Marangi had 8 tackles and an INT. Listen, the defense has been decent. Offense needs to find a way to generate points and have consistent drives without turning the ball over. Sleepy Hollow, Mars, their offense has been pretty solid. They rushed for 320 yards last week. Mahood, 110 yards. Richardson was really solid. But Sleepy Hollow defensively, 13 out of 15. Something's got to give here, Mars. I know I might be going on a limb. I'm going to go Clarkstown North. I think that they make enough plays offensively, running the football against Sleepy Hollow's defense that has struggled at times. I think defensively, they'll hold up okay because Sleepy Hollow's offense has been pretty effective. I'm going Clarkstown North in a tight one.
I'm going to go Sleepy Hollow here. I think they're at home. I think they need a win. They're really struggling right now, and I think they're going to try to at least ride on this momentum that they have at home against another team that's struggling to kind of get their footing. I'm going to go Sleepy Hollow.
Somers, 3-0, 2-0 in league play at Mahopac, who's 1-2, 0-2 in league play. I'm just going to tell you this right now, Mars. I think Somers is going to look past Mahopac a little bit. I think Mahopac is going to catch him by surprise. I think Joey Koch gets 20-plus carries in this week, and I think it gives them a decent opportunity to win this. I think you're going to see a desperate Mahopac team. This one's going to be close. I'm going Somers, though. It's going to be a close one. I do think, again, Somers came off a huge victory last week, out-of-state opponent. Again, very impressive. I think, do they come out and look past Mahopac a little bit, Mars? I think it could happen. But I do think Somers makes enough plays in the second half. They're going to win this game running the football and making some plays in the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible for them to look past Mahopac. I mean, in my opinion, I think Mahopac has to realize that this is the do or die. Right? I mean, like you've only had a certain amount of chances, especially league games, and so far you haven't won as many that you should be. And especially last week, I thought this was a good opportunity to kind of get some momentum side. But I think Somers is going to be a difficult opponent to play. You know, whether you're ahead the momentum on your side or didn't, either way it'd be tough. I can see Somers look past Mahopac in the first half, but even that being the case, I think I'm gonna go with Somers just all around. I think Somers has more power up front. They got more playmakers in the backfield. I think Mahopac is kind of, I'm not saying deflated. I think they're a little beaten up after the last game. I mean, it's double overtime. It's tough for any team to kind of pull back and all right, time to move on. And we're talking about kids here. I mean, that's a tough loss to have on your own home field. Now, lucky for Mahopac, they're playing again on their own field, but yeah. I just think Somers just has too much. I don't think that Mahopac can win here. I'm going to go Somers.
Game of the week time, Mars. John Jay Cross River 2-2 at Pelham, 4-0. Does Pelham go to 5-0, including 4-0 league play? Mars, who do you got winning and why?
Well, this is actually a very interesting game. I think that when you're looking at John Jay Cross River, I feel like their offense has been getting better and better. They've just been clicking on all cylinders. Obviously, 500 yards of offense in the last game. They've just been rocking, right? I think they know that they can run the ball, right? They can figure out the run. They can get their offensive line to really step up and make some big plays. And defensively, I feel like they just need kind of just try to be physical with Pelham. We already know that they're going to be stacked in the box as much as possible. And Pelham, I think that they deserve a lot of credit. They had a really, a lot of people thought they would be here. And the biggest issue I have with them is that they have too many missed opportunities. They need to be more consistent. And with that being the case, I'm going to go with John Jay Cross River. I think John Jay Cross River is becoming better as the season goes on. And obviously that we're all, halfway through the season. I think that John Jay Cross River is going to be more efficient than ever. I think they're going to lift the moment. I'm going to go John Jay Cross River.
Again, Pelham, number 1 offense, number 2 defense in a sloppy game last week. Maybe they got that sloppiness, rustiness out of their system coming home. I think they're more physical than John Jay, right? So all these things are a factor that leans towards Pelham. But I have to say, what makes me the most nervous is John Jay Cross River defensively. I just think at times they're just not physical enough. But I'm going to agree with you, Mars. I think this is the upset of the week. I think John Jay Cross River defensively, listen, the coaches, the players, they watch tape. They probably, there's way too many yards given up. It was too easy last week. I think they step up. I think they bring a lot of pressure. Pelham's going to find success, but I think John Jay Cross River's 3-headed monster on offense makes enough plays. Protection holds up just enough. High-scoring game, I'm going John Jay Cross River. All right, everyone, that was our show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to give a thumbs up and subscribe for future content and to help the channel. We thank you guys so much. Enjoy the games this weekend. We'll see you all very soon.